Chapter 4. April. April sighed as she checked her phone for the 100th time. She should probably just give up. It had been more than 2 weeks since Carter had asked for her number, but he still hadn't called yet. That probably meant he wasn't interested. But why ask for her number if he wasn't? "Watching that phone isn't going to make it ring any faster," Lucia said, as she glanced back at April. "I'm sorry." Swallowing her embarrassment, April tucked the phone back into her pocket. She was supposed to be helping Lucia pick out a wedding dress, not obsessing over a man. But he was a cute man and a professional football player. How could she not obsess a little? "I just don't understand why he'd ask for my number and then not call me." Because it's Carter Young?" Lucia paused her dress search and fixed April with a pointed stare, complete with raised eyebrows for punctuation. "I did tell you that he was a serial dater and commitment phobe, right?" April sighed. "You did, but I don't mind that. It's not like I'm ready to jump into monogamy. I just wish he'd give me a chance." "How can you not mind that? The man is rarely seen with the same woman more than once. Even if he does ask you out, it might just be one night, and then nothing. Why would you want to put yourself through that?" "Because it's Carter Young, pro football player?" April said the words slowly and with emphasis. Why did Lucia even have to ask? Surely you get the status behind that. After all, you're about to marry Jefferson Davis. April could not mask the exasperation that filled her voice. Lucia might be the only woman in the world to not understand the status that went with being linked to a pro football player. "Yeah, but I'm not marrying him because he's a football player." I know. You're marrying him because he's an amazing father," April said, with a roll of her eyes as she began flipping through dresses. Lucia had no idea how lucky she was, and she didn't even seem to want the fame or notoriety that went with being the wife of one of the Texas Tornado players. "And because he's an amazing man of faith who's kind and caring," Lucia said. "I know we don't always agree, April, but I really think your priorities are a little off when it comes to finding a relationship. That's because you think I'm looking for Mr. Right, and I'm just looking for Mr. Right now." April liked Lucia, but this was the divide they could never seem to get over. Lucia believed in God and putting him first in her life. April had no problem with people who believed in God, but she didn't share that belief. Nothing in her life had ever convinced her that God existed. What she did know was that you only got one shot at this life on earth, and she was determined to have as much fun as possible with her one shot. "But what has searching for Mr. Right now really gotten you?" Lucia asked. April opened her mouth to respond, but the words made her pause. What had it gotten her? She'd certainly had some memorable dates and some fun experiences, but nothing that was lasting, which she'd always been fine with before. She'd never wanted something lasting, so why did her answer feel so empty now? It was something she didn't want to think about, so she decided to change the subject. "You know what? Enough of the serious talk. We're here to find you a dress, right?" The look in Lucia's eyes said she wanted to push the issue, but finally she relented and nodded. However, April knew the discussion was far from over, so she continued without allowing downtime for Lucia to reignite the conversation. "A perfect-fitting, needs-no-alteration dress since you decided to set this wedding less than 2 months after Jefferson's proposal." April still couldn't believe the wedding was just a few weeks away. 6 weeks didn't seem like a long enough engagement in her mind, but then again, she didn't plan on getting married, so any engagement seemed too short to her. Yes, and as I've said before, time means nothing when you know you have the right person by your side. But he's already by your side, so what's the hurry to rush into the marriage? Suddenly, her eyes widened, and her mouth fell open. You aren't pregnant, are you? What? Lucia's face reddened, and she glanced around as if someone might be listening. No, I'm not pregnant. Then I don't get it. You have everything you want right now, so why the rush? There was a squeak of a metal hanger sliding against the rack that almost muffled Lucia's next words. Well, not everything. And then it hit April. Of course, she should have known that Lucia would wait until marriage, though April definitely could not understand that stance. She'd been with enough men to know that sometimes it was amazing, and other times it fell flat. How awful would it be to marry someone you thought was great, only to find out you had no chemistry in the bedroom? You really haven't at all? Lucia shook her head and held up a beautiful white gown. What do you think about this one? Okay, evidently that part of the conversation was over, which was fine with April. She hadn't really known what to say to it anyway, and talking about dresses was much safer. I think you should definitely try more than one. April grabbed a few other dresses from the rack and flung them over her arm. When are the other girls coming? She hoped that with the appearance of Shelby, Kinsey, and Clara, that the focus would go off her and back to the wedding. They should be here any minute, Lucia said, and as if her words had the ability to teleport, the door to the dress shop opened and the 3 women filed in. Sorry we're late, Kinsey said, as the women reached them. Shelby just had to stop for a chai tea and a pastry. Hey, I can't help my cravings. Shelby patted her stomach and smiled coyly at Lucia and April. What? You're pregnant? Lucia asked. Shelby's smile widened as she nodded. Yep, just found out a few days ago. Congratulations, Lucia said, crossing the distance between them to give Shelby a hug. Wow, do cravings start that quickly? Kinsey let out a loud snort. No, they don't. She's just milking this for all it's worth. Like you would know, Shelby responded with a roll of her eyes. It's not like you've been pregnant. Well, that's exciting, but isn't that going to make picking out a dress hard? April asked. As all the women turned their attention to April, she shrugged. I mean, pregnant women get bigger, right? They do, but not that quickly, Clara said. She'd never been pregnant either, as far as April knew, but she'd probably picked up some knowledge in her medical classes. It was obvious Clara was trying to smooth the situation, for which April was glad. I think Shelby will be fine with whatever dress we choose, especially since the wedding is so close. Okay then, we better start looking, Kinsey said, jumping in as well. Do you have anything in mind, Lucia? If you give us an idea, we can help you look. Lucia tapped her lips as she looked around. I'm not really particular. I was just thinking of color. I'd like the bridesmaid dresses to be long and a soft pink color, but I'm open to you guys finding the style that fits you best. If we can just make sure the color is close, then I'm happy with it. Okay, then how about we all find a few dresses we like, and then we can match colors at the end, Clara suggested. The girls all agreed, and April smiled as she turned to the rack. Sometimes having a friend who was easygoing wasn't all bad. At least she wouldn't be forced into some horrible dress that made her look like a hot dog or a bottle of Pepto-Bismol. She began flipping through the dresses and snagging the ones in her size that might look good on her. When her arms were full, she carried them to the dressing room and began trying them on. The first dress was a no-go. While it fit nicely, there was something about the color that made her look pale and sickly. Of course, pink wasn't the best color for redheads anyway, but there had to be a better pink. The next one was more of a dusty rose color, but at least it didn't make April look washed out. And it was sleeveless, showing off her shoulders, which was a definite plus. She moved it to the keep side. The neckline on the third dress was too high. The lace sleeves on the fourth were itchy. By the time she finished, the majority of the dresses she'd brought in were on the discarded side. But she had 3 decent picks on the other side. She grabbed those and exited the dressing room to see if the other girls had decided yet. "Did you find some you liked?" Lucia asked, turning from the small rack outside her dressing room. She only had 5 dresses total on her rack, leaving April to wonder if those were her final options or if she'd barely started. "Yeah, I think so. 3, anyway." April held them up for inspection and then glanced toward the other dressing room. "Are the other girls still trying things on?" Lucia nodded. "They are, but they should be done soon." She picked up a long dress with a lace neckline and sleeves. "What do you think of this one?" Too conservative were the words that first entered April's mind, but she managed to keep them locked behind her lips. "I think it suits you, but you'll know for sure when you try it on." Lucia's eyes scanned over the dress again. "Yeah, you're probably right. I just don't want to buy the wrong dress." "Don't worry so much," Shelby said, as she exited one of the dressing rooms. "The dress is only one part of the wedding, and the wedding is a small part of the bigger picture, the marriage. 30 years from now, you probably won't even remember the dress you wore, but you will remember the way he looked at you, the fights you had, and the makeups after them." A small smile emerged on Lucia's face, and she nodded. "You're right. The dress is just one part of one day, but it's all the other days that matter more." April wasn't sure she agreed with that statement, but she kept her opinion to herself, since she was clearly in the minority. She still wasn't convinced she wanted to get married, but if she did, she wanted the wedding to be perfect, and a big part of that was the perfect dress. Kinsey and Clara emerged from their rooms a few moments later, and the girls compared their favorite dresses. "This one is definitely my favorite," April said, pointing to the dusty rose number. Lucia pursed her lips together as she looked at April's favorite compared to the other girls' favorites. "Yeah, it's not quite the same color, though." She picked up April's second dress and held it next to the other 3. "This one is, though. Would you be okay with it instead?" "Of course." April made sure to post a smile on her face, but inside she was slightly annoyed. Why did she have to take her second choice while the other girls got their first choice? It seemed unfair, but at least her second choice still looked good on her. With the bridesmaids' dresses picked, the girls then watched Lucia model her bridal gowns. While none of them were April's style, she offered her honest opinion on which she thought was the best. But she was still glad when the fitting was done and the dress was decided upon. April said goodbye to the other girls and breathed a sigh of relief when she was out of the dress shop. Being in a wedding was fun, but dealing with all the work before it, not so much. At least she would get the chance to see Carter. She knew if she could find some time alone with him, she could show him how good they would be together.